From the #1 best-selling author of Life Rescripted, you're now tuning in to the Year of Purpose podcast. I'm Zephan Moses Blacksburg. Scott Hansen is a high-performance coach, speaker, author, and host of the highly acclaimed entrepreneurial podcast found on iTunes called Success Hackers. Having been featured on multiple radio stations and podcasts, as well as being a contributing writer for biznews.com and entrepreneur.com, Scott's passion is to not only help entrepreneurs achieve success in business, but to break free from mediocrity and live a life of significance and purpose. Scott's the creator of the Ultimate Success System, a high-performance coaching program teaching entrepreneurs how to 10x their business, get more clients, and become more productive throughout their day. And today, he's joining in, hanging out with us. Scott, how's it going?
I am fantastic, Zeph, and I'm ready to rock and roll, man. Fortunately for me, we didn't get the snow. I know you guys got on the East Coast, so I feel sorry for you, bro.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be out of here soon, and never a better day to be stuck inside doing some podcasting.
That's right.
So
that's
can't
right.
complain there. Get to talk to some great people.
Absolutely.
So, one of the big things when we bring people on the show is, for the most part, many of the people tuning in, don't really know the person. So I'd love to give just a little bit of background on, where you came from and how do you get to, being a high performance coach, speaker, and author. Obviously, that type of success doesn't happen overnight. It happens with a lot of hard work put in for a significant amount of time. I'd love to just hear a little piece of your story and, who were you, before this and how'd you get here?
Yeah, well, the Cliff Notes version had about a 15, 17-year sales career, bounced around kind of different jobs and tried out different industries and was always on the hunt for my passion or my purpose. And throughout my career in the corporate space would always kind of have the itch, that itch, which is I knew that there was something bigger and different. I just didn't know how to find that. Didn't really know what the calling was. And, I would spend hours and hours and hours in Barnes and Noble or Borders back in the day and really trying to find that purpose or that passion, and would read all kinds of personal development and, autobiographies of successful people, and would be the guy that had, stacks of books or magazines and was just hoping and praying that something would pop off the page to say this is what you were meant to do. And it was a struggle for a long time, and I'm sure that some of your listeners can probably relate. But I just as I went through my career, I always say that I just was always on the search and always trying to find out what that passion or what that purpose was, and always kind of knew that it was going to be sort of in the personal development space, but I didn't know how, I didn't know where, I didn't know what, and I didn't really know how to pursue that. So as my life started to take a little bit of a different turn, and I met my wife, and it's just been absolutely amazing. And, having her in my life has been nothing short of miraculous. And she's really helped me see things a little bit clearer. And she's got this great job. So it allowed me to sort of jump into that entrepreneurial space to do what you just alluded that I do, which is, coach business owners on how to really have a more impactful business, get new clients, et cetera, and then also a speaker. And like you mentioned, the host of a podcast. So, it wasn't the easy road. I was always envious of people that always knew what they wanted to do since I've been 10, 11, 12 years old. That was never me. It took me some time to find it. And but I did, and here we are now. And it's, the old saying is once you find out something that you're really passionate about or you just, take a liking to, it doesn't really even feel like work. I mean, it's amazing to me how I could easily work till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night like it's nothing, not because I have to, but really because I want to. It's just something that really feeds my soul, I call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you brought up a good point there is that, and I'm sure you probably agree with this, many people get stuck because they're not out there searching and constantly trying new things. They just kind of expect it to fall, into their lap. And do you think that, so many people are lost in a sense because they're not out there experimenting and always searching for something different?
Well, I can't speak for anybody else, of course. I believe, we all have, every one of us is a gift. I mean, without sounding too deep or philosophical or, kind of sort of, foo-foo-ish, I call
Yeah.
it. The reality of it is every one of us got chosen to play in this game called life. At the highest of level, we all got chosen. It's not easy to, conceive. I mean, my wife and I are trying to have a baby now, and it's amazing what you have to go through just to conceive, to have a child. So I truly believe that every one of us on this earth got chosen to play in this game called life. And what you do with your life is up to you. If you're happy or sad or whatever, it's really is all up to you. And it's the steps you make and the decisions you take and the actions you take towards whatever it is you feel that you're called to do. So if you're someone that likes the corporate space, amen, have at it, keep
Hmm.
going. It's your life. And my life for me was just, again, I knew I was sort of meant to do something different and bigger. And once I found it, it was great. But yeah, to your point, I do believe that a lot of people sort of put on this front, where everything's all hunky dory, and or maybe it's just they're sort of settling with whatever life they have. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying for me, it was I just wanted to do something different and bigger and have a more impact and empower more people across the world to really play bigger in both their life and business. And so, I always tell people when you get that nudge, that's God, Buddha, the universe, whoever it is you dig, whoever it is that you're called to. For me, it's God. You got to listen to that because that's not going to go away. And you might try to sweep that under the rug, that feeling, but that feeling isn't going to go away. That's you being tapped to say, hey, maybe you should be doing something different that really is truly your calling.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I had that nudge, and I ignored it for about 5 or 6 years. And the craziest thing was that as soon as I started to listen to it, everything started to fall into place. And
Mm.
it's just unbelievable how much we actually push against, when our true calling is kind of giving us that little tap on the shoulder, because how scary it can be, or how you're taking a step into the unknown there,
Hmm.
which kind of brings me to this next piece is, let's talk about failure a little bit, because oftentimes people prevent themselves from even starting something because they're afraid they're going to fail or they're afraid they're going to fall. And, that's a huge part of becoming successful. And whether you take the entrepreneurial route or not, it's a part of life. So maybe do you have a time in your life or a moment in your life that you'd be interested in sharing on failure, and maybe we'll talk about how someone could work through something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you just alluded to, whether it's in your corporate life or whether it's in your entrepreneurial life, we as kids, we're taught not to fail. We're taught not to touch that over there or not to touch anything or grab anything. We're taught to color, but inside the lines. We're taught to get an A on the report card and all those great things from an educational standpoint, and it's absolutely true. However, when we become an adult and then we take on this thing called a life or becoming an entrepreneur or climbing the corporate ladder, failure is absolutely just part of the equation of success, specifically around entrepreneurship. And I get the opportunity, as you alluded to in the beginning, to interview some of the biggest thought leaders in the entrepreneurial space on the planet through my podcast, Success Hackers. And every single person says the same thing, that failure is literally just a course correction. It's feedback to what you're doing wrong or what you're, obviously doing right. So it's interesting because it's easy from a logical standpoint or from a lip service standpoint, like we're talking about right now. But when you're in that moment of quote unquote failure or things aren't going the way you thought, to me, that's the ultimate test, right? Without, again, bringing God or the universe in, it's the ultimate test. And it's kind of like you climbing up a mountain, and your brass ring, whatever brass ring it is for you, is up at the top of the mountain. But as you're climbing up, you're going to have all kinds of things come at you, whether it's the wind, whether it's animals, whether it's other people telling you can't do it, whether it's you slip and you fall 100 yards down the mountain. You have all those things. You have a decision to make. And to me, like I said, it's the ultimate test, right? The ultimate brass ring is to get up to your success mountain and grab that brass ring. But just understand that while you're climbing up that mountain, you're going to have things not go your way. A mentor of mine told me a long time ago, you have to embrace the entrepreneurial process. And again, from a lip service, that makes logical sense. But from an emotional standpoint, sometimes it's not easy. I mean, there's been many times I wanted to give up and just
Hmm.
go back to, a paid salary in the corporate space and know that I can make X amount of dollars with insurance. And trust me, it would be fairly simple to do that. But then I look at the big picture, and I mean the big vision of my life, which is I could do that, but then 15, 20 years from now, what would I say? And I call it the rocking chair moment. What would I say when I'm 90 years old on the rocking chair? Would I say I really, really, really dug in, planted my flag, and went for it? Or I kind of tiptoed in and I tried it for a year or two, and then I kind of went back to my old life. Well, for me, from the bigger vision of my life, I want to impact millions of people. That's a big vision.
Hmm.
So shame on me if I decided to quit and give up and go back to that life when the going gets tough, because I will never know what it feels like to join that success club, I call it, right? The VIP success club called being a successful entrepreneur. I'll never know what it feels like to get over that hump if I gave up. And I would say that to all your listeners, which is you're going to have moments in your entrepreneurial journey when you absolutely are tested to the nth degree. It always comes back down to how big is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you trying to accomplish? Not necessarily from a money standpoint, excuse me, but from a bigger vision standpoint. And again, failure is just course correction. It's perspective. You can look at failure and go, oh my God, I'm terrible, I'm terrible, I'm horrible. Or you can look at failure and say, just because you failed, that doesn't mean you're a failure. And there's a huge perspective difference. So, again, my advice to your listeners is fail, fail quickly and fail forward because again, and I always like to use the analogy like this. I was a big athlete growing up, played a lot of sports, and the only way for me to learn how to hit a fastball in baseball was for me to put the helmet on and stand inside the box and for a pitcher to throw as hard as he can, and this little white ball at me to see if I can hit it. Well,
Right.
I could have studied that. I could have dissected it and drawn out maps about the trajectory of the ball and the velocity and when I have to step into the ball and swing the bat. That's all. I could study that for, hours and hours and days and months. But until I get in the box and swing the bat, I don't know what it's really like to learn how to hit a ball. It's the same thing in the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I mean, I even tell something very similar. Is I tell people, if your one goal is to go skydiving, at the end of the day, you still have to jump out of the plane.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
there's no way around that. I mean, you could do the fake little wind tunnel thing, here on the ground, but if your dream goal is to go skydiving, you've got to jump out of a plane.
Right.
There's no way around that. I really like your idea with the whole rocking chair mentality of, let's look at where I am at rocking chair age and question myself. Am I going to regret the things that I've done, or am I going to really acknowledge myself for having taken those risks and pushing my comfort zone? I think that's a great perspective to put on it. Um, when life throws you one of these sort of course corrections, how can we make sure that we respond? Because a lot of who we are in our character is really how we react to certain situations. So how can we make sure that we don't just, freak out or shut down or give up on the spot? I think it's great to be in that rocking chair mindset. Are there any other, tools or things we should have, in our back pocket to just prepare ourselves even for when that's going to happen? Obviously, you can't predict failures that are going to pop up all the time, but, if we get thrown a little course correction that could throw us, pretty far off the map, how can we make sure that we react in a calm manner and really ensure that we can jump back on course quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll allude to kind of what I talked about earlier, which is just prepare for it. I mean, just realize you're going to fail. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that sounds harsh. I mean, I know that sounds simplistic and sophomoric and harsh, but the reality of it is you're going to have a day, maybe two, where you don't maybe feel like keep going. And like I said, you have to have a bigger vision for what you want this entrepreneurial journey to ultimately, how do you want it to ultimately take place? Meaning, like I said, if you want to build a speaking business as an example or an online business, just realize you're going to have to pick up new skill sets. you're going to have someone join your business and then they quit your business. And then you're going to have someone else join something else and then they return your products. It's just sort of all part of the learning journey, the learning experience. It's kind of like, I keep using analogies and stories, but it's kind of like, if you can remember the very first time you rode a bike. Imagine back when you were 5, 6, 7 years old. I mean, and if you can go back that far and remember that far, there's this piece of metal with these thing called inner tube tires and these streamers coming from the bike, and everybody in the neighborhood's riding a bike, and you're like, that thing is as tall as I am. And you mean to tell me I have to get on this thing and pedal? And the answer is yes. Well, do you want to be the only person in the neighborhood not riding a bike? The answer is of course not. So as kids, we get on the bike and we fall down. In my case, I crash into the station wagon, down the block in front of me multiple times. But what did I do? I got back up, but I would have never known what it was like to ride a bicycle if I just sat on the porch watching everybody else and critiquing. So to answer your question maybe more specifically is how can you sort of prepare for it, or how do you deal with it when that comes is, again, it comes down to the course correction. What did you learn from it?
Mm-hmm.
That this is the best teacher, right? Failure is the best teacher. You can look back and say, okay, I ran a Facebook ad online and I spent $20 and I didn't get any signups and I didn't get any opt-ins and I got 5 people click the ad. Well, you have 2 choices. You can say Facebook advertising doesn't work, or you can actually retest and retweak. Mm-hmm. So you kind of go back to the lab and say, okay, well, maybe I have to redesign the actual ad itself. It's not as compelling as I personally thought it was. So you retest or retweak the ad. Maybe it's the copy in the ad. Maybe it's all those things. So you keep testing and testing and testing and failing and failing and testing. And all of a sudden, maybe the 3rd time around, you hit the sweet spot. You actually create a Facebook, I'm just using this as an example. You create a Facebook ad that resonates with your target audience. Well, guess what? You would have never got to that point. You'd have never got to the quote unquote success in this example if what? If you quit the first time it didn't work.
Right.
So that's just a sort of a kind of a simplistic answer, but I think it really does it's a ripple effect into all other failure type of examples. And, again, I go back to the ultimate test. Someone asked me one time that, when I was kind of down and out in my early days, and let me tell you, I still to this day have the days where you're like, oh my God, is it going to still work? Am I going to be able to, supply for my, provide for my family? And all those questions we all have. But someone told me a while ago, they said, well, what's the alternative? And that's like the $1 million question. What's the alternative? So you're going through your failure and you just had some sort of thing that didn't go well. Well, what's the alternative? Because the reason why you started your business in the first place, I'm assuming because it was for me, the reason why I wasn't really keen on this thing called the corporate world or what I was doing before. So I wanted to be my own boss, create my own freedom, impact more people. So what's the alternative? Go back to your old life? Well, you're going back to an old life that you didn't like in the first place.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. That's probably the best fuel for the fire more than anything, to remind yourself of, where you could be had you not taken this leap, and where you will be right now if you give up right here on the spot, and you'll probably realize it's not where you want to be.
And I tell people too, it's here's the reality. You asked me what's maybe 1 or 2 things people can do when they come up against it. Another thing they can do is to have this mindset of it's kind of like having blinders on, like a horse has blinders on. That horse can only see in front of them when they're walking or running or whatever. Well, here's the reality. It's kind of like us right now. We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. Meaning, your business life is going to look dramatically different in 6 months or in 12 months than it does today. Meaning, not only will you grow your skill set and your mindset and your posture and your attitude and your confidence, but the people that you're meant to impact, you probably haven't even impacted them yet. So What I mean by that is, if you stop and give up, just imagine the people that you haven't even met yet that you're supposed to serve with your products or services, and you're actually doing them a disservice, people that you haven't even met yet, if you give up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's almost like you're robbing the rest of the world of the gift that you could be giving to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think that this is all very good motivation for everyone tuning in. Let's shift gears a little bit into just the entrepreneurial side of this and in creating a business, maybe talking a little bit about where do I even start if I'm trying to, let's say I am in that cubicle life and that 9 to 5 world is not for me. If I were to try and create this exit strategy of what to do next, how can I, be successful in starting something up on the side? Or should I be taking a dive into the deep end and just saying, you know what, next week I'm going to quit and I'm just going to start doing this now? How do I make that transition as, I guess, the smartest way possible?
Yeah, I would absolutely advise against sort of just cold turkey quitting unless you have, a spouse that could literally, support you, that from a financial standpoint. We're talking financially right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as you hate what you do in your corporate world, you have to be smart about this thing called building, a business. So I called it building a bridge. So it's going to take a ton of hustle. It's going to take a ton of focus. And for the next 6 to 12 months, depending on how much money you have in reserve, depending on, like I mentioned, if you have a spouse that can support you from a financial standpoint, there's a lot of factors that go into this. But sort of this 30,000-foot Cliff Notes answer is you have to build a bridge. The last thing you want to do is leave your job and then start this business, and then in 6 months you're making still no money because you're still building authority. People are still trying to understand who you are and what you do, your websites. There's a lot more to it than you really think out of the chute. So don't take yourself out of the game too early. And I see a lot of people doing that by saying, all right, Scott, here I am. I'm ready. I quit my job yesterday and I'm ready to go. You got to coach me and let's do this. Let's do this. And I'm a little bit, kind of like, ooh, I can't believe you just did that. And again, there's nothing wrong with just going for it, but you got to also be smart. Listen, at the end of the day, do people just do that and sort of just build the wings on the way down, I call it? Yes. But you also don't want to take yourself out of the game before the game even starts. And I
Right.
see that happening. People have like 4 grand saved up and they're like, all right, I'm ready. And I say, well, what if this thing takes a year, maybe 2 years for you to even start seeing some profit? Are you able to do that? Well, not with 4 grand. Well, then I say, well, time out. Then you're going to have to really put a 12-month plan together. You're going to have to be really dedicated and committed to what you're about to do. And then you take smaller steps. Again, that can mean a million different things depending on what business you want to get into. But I always call it building the bridge and be smart about it. When you get home at 5:30, 6 o'clock, rather than watching TV, again, this is where the commitment comes in. You got to start working at night, and your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whoever might not be happy, but you sit down with that person and say, listen, as you know, I'm not really happy with what I'm doing. And I know that if I jumped into ABC business, I think that's what my calling is. I would love to do that. And you sit down with them and you have a conversation and they say, okay, well, what's it going to take from a financial standpoint? What's your exit strategy? Well, I would love to be doing this in 6 months. Great. If you can do it in 6 months, then I would start saving right now so that you have X amount of dollars built up as a reserve so that you can do this. So you have to be thinking very logical about this rather than just emotional. Personally, I jumped right in. It was kind of stupid. I would never do it again, but I did it. Here I am. I'm making things happen. I have a very supportive wife, so she understands what I'm going through. But again, it takes time and it takes, you know, but on the reverse side, there's too many people that I see. They're ready to get ready to get ready to get ready,
Right.
and they never jump in. So there's a very fine line of building the bridge, being smart, versus it has to be 100% perfect before I even dip my toe into the water to this thing called entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're absolutely right with that. Is some people just wait too long. They wait for everything to be perfect. And I guess the real answer is it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be exactly how you want it. And so there's never a better day to do it, to, start working on your dream than today. But to that same point, you don't want to be the person who says, all right, I quit. What's next? And
you want to, and if your listeners are really serious about doing that, if they're listening right now to say, yes, that's me, I'm ready to go. I want to jump into this thing called entrepreneurship, all those things. Like I said, the best way to do that is literally to have a 6-month time frame. And what I mean by that is you want to have it planned out so that you are making progress to whatever that business is for you, whatever that is. You want to be making progress every week and every month so that in 6 months, that's like the finish line. That could be your freedom call. You go in and say to your manager, to your boss, I love this saying, I'm having something's wrong right now, and I'm having, this feeling that I don't belong here anymore, and you quit the job, and I said, you know what, I'm about to pursue my passion and do whatever that is. Well, for the last 6 months, you've built that tiny bridge so that when the 6-month time comes, that bridge is built, and you're ready to quit, and you're ready to just hit the ground running. Whether the website was created, whether your products and services were created. And again, it takes time and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of hustle. But I'm telling you, if you do this right, within 6 months, you can quit your job and dive right into the things you've been working on the last 6 months, so that rather than just saying, here I am, I quit, I'm ready to go. Well, it's going to take you 6 to 12 months just to start building anything. Do it while you're working, so that the last thing you want to do is you want to be operating from scarcity.
Right.
And when you don't have any money coming in, you're operating from scarcity. Well, what does that mean? Believe it or not, you're operating from desperation. So you need the sale. My God, I need the sale. I need to sell you something. And it's written all over your forehead, desperation, desperation, desperation. But if you have this plan in place and you don't necessarily need those individuals to buy your products or services, you're going to be so surprised at the people that actually do buy your products and services, just because you're coming from a place of posture and strength.
Yeah, and as a freelancer myself, I can definitely vouch for this. Is getting things off the ground. I've found that the months when I really just focus on, letting the world take care of me, is the way I usually say it. I get clients that come in threes for some reason. Like any time where I finally let go and say, oh, I don't need a client, or I don't need money, it would just be kind of nice, and I could use some more work. It's funny, within like the next day or two, something usually comes up, and after that first thing, it kind of rolls in, and people really can tell when you're desperate for money. So I totally know what that feels like. Hey, Scott, I know that you take people from, once they've started to really 10x their business and take it to the next level. I know that we could keep going, but I'd love to share with people how they can find out more about what you do, how you do it, and, if they're interested, if they've started their business or they're getting ready to jump into this, what's the best way for them to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure. I love what you're doing with what, obviously with you're doing. Congrats on everything that you have going on. You're making things happen with your business and with the podcast. So, congrats for sure. I wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if any of your listeners, really there's just two ways. If they want to also check out the podcast called Success Hackers, that's it, successhackers.net. We've had some really successful entrepreneurs on the show that anybody, the person that won Shark Tank, who's in business with Mark Cuban, to another woman who, was actually the winner of the Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian version of the Shark Tank, and some other the guy that also was a celebrity guest judge on The Celebrity Apprentice with Donald Trump, Jeffrey Hazlett, was on my show last week. And so, yeah, it's fun to have these guys and gals really popping at a high level, sharing their success hacks with our listeners. So it's just go to successhackers.net. And also, if any of your listeners want to really grow their business in a massive way, really step into 2016 and grow their business and have more success and learn how to actually work less and make more, they can go to massive. Wow. they can go to massivebusinessgrowth.com. And in that, I actually give away a free ebook. It's 5 steps to grow your business in a massive way. So just go to massivebusinessgrowth.com and they can check me out that way. And, I'm across all social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, Scott Hansen, Hansen, so they can check me out as well.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much for being here today, and really appreciate you giving us some time and talking to our listeners about, not only before the entrepreneurial process, but a little bit of how to approach the entrepreneurial process the right way, or at least, the smartest way. So thanks for being here. And again, if people want to check you out, they should head on over and grab that free download. Mm-hmm. And you are the creator of the Ultimate Success System, so I know that that's out there too somewhere. And thanks so much for sharing everything and for being here.
Absolutely, yeah. And if anybody wants to, if they really feel like they're committed, literally 100% committed to taking their business to the next level, and they want I don't really offer this, but on your show I will. If they do want to have a 60-minute, what I call a business breakthrough strategy session, and it's a 1 hour done over Skype, where we do a deep dive into their business and really learn what success is for them and design a game plan and a roadmap on how to make the best 12 months of their entire business life. I normally charge $495 for the 60-minute session, but for your listeners, I would offer it for free. So all they have to do is, if any business owner wants to take advantage of that, I only have a few spots available, they can just email me. And my email is scott@scotthproductions.com, scott@scotthproductions.com, and then just put in the email business breakthrough session or something like that, and I'll make sure to honor that to your audience.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much for offering that up to the listeners. Thanks again for being here, and looking forward to keeping in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zeph. You're doing great stuff. I appreciate the time.
Hey, everyone. It's Zeph. Did you like this episode? Be sure to subscribe so that you can tune in next week and tell a friend about the show. If you want access to free training and exclusive interviews on success, happiness, lifestyle design, and adventure, visit me at yearofpurpose.com. Until next time, go out and let life surprise you so that you can live a life rescripted.